Chapter 483. It wasn't because Thea had a close relationship with the god of war, but because the god of war's godhood was a trap. Diana had killed the god of war and automatically obtained the god of war's godhood. 5,000 years ago, this would have been a good thing. However, at this critical juncture where the old god had fallen and the new god had risen, it would be too much of a trap if she didn't become the old god instead of the new one. The girl named Zola watched them change. In the dim light of the night, she felt that Thea looked familiar, but she wasn't sure. She didn't want to say anything, especially after seeing how close the two girls were. "How do we get there?" Diana asked. "I think the key in my hand can take us back," Zola said before Angelina could. Thea glanced at it. It was an exquisite magic item without any traps. She nodded at Diana, and the three teleported away. As soon as they left the teleportation portal, two sharp arrows shot toward them one after the other. With two muffled sounds, Thea and Diana reached out and grabbed an arrow at the same time. They were using the Assassin League's famous grabbing technique. Although the ninja master couldn't win against the two girls even if he did somersaults, his martial arts skills were praiseworthy. Some techniques were very useful at any time. As the person closest to Thea, Diana's martial arts skills were naturally affected. Facing the incoming arrows, the two girls both chose to use the Assassin League's grabbing technique. Casually throwing the arrow on the ground, Zola stepped back in fear. The two girls fearlessly looked at the enemy approaching from the dark. Clatter, clatter. Two tall horses with majestic torsos and slender limbs came out. There was a knight holding a bow on each of the horses. However, when they walked into the night, the three of them finally saw what they looked like. They were not knights at all, but centaurs. The places where the horses' heads should have been were replaced by human bodies. Their upper bodies were covered in mud and blood. The human heads were also twisted out of shape like stomped watermelons. Their eyes were blood red, and the sounds coming out of their mouths were like the howls of humans and the roars of horses. This is not a natural creature. It seems to be the product of some kind of magical transformation, Thea said in disgust. She vaguely remembered that these two were sent by Hera, the Queen of Gods. The Queen of Gods, who was known for her jealousy, naturally wanted to kill Zora, who was pregnant. For these old gods who only stared at her every day, Sia really didn't want to get involved in their affairs. It was just that the noble circle was too messy, like a melodramatic family drama. It would be unreasonable if they didn't perish. However, Diana couldn't run away. According to Hippolyte's original words, this was her innate responsibility. Although Thea didn't want to, she could only helplessly jump in. What a blasphemy against life. Diana carefully sized up the centaur. Its aura was filled with madness and savagery. This thing was clearly beyond saving. One each. The two glanced at each other and instantly understood each other's meaning. Diana attacked first. She threw out her shield and knocked away the arrow. Then, she jumped up and slashed at the centaur's neck. Thea wasn't as powerful as her. These two centaurs only looked ferocious and had their full potential stimulated by magic. They were not afraid of death, but their true strength was not worth mentioning. Thea didn't have good armor. Unlike Diana, who was fully armed, she had only changed into casual clothes. She had many tricks up her sleeve and didn't really want to fight with these dirty centaurs. She opened her jade-white left hand, and a chain made of lightning whizzed out and smashed at the centaur's head. The centaur, who only had killing in its mind, realized that it couldn't take the attack head-on. It half-knelt and lowered its body, dodging the chain. At the same time, it drew its bow and shot another arrow at Thea. "You want to compete with me in archery?" Thea didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Such a crude magic creation wasn't worthy of her shooting back. "Go back!" With a beautiful irony spell, the arrow quickly changed direction in the air and flew back at an even faster speed. The centaur was caught off guard, and the arrow pierced through its body. Thick, dark blood flowed out continuously. Sia was unforgiving. The lightning chain that she had thrown out earlier was remolded by her, and a spear surrounded by lightning was thrown out by her. She wasn't too sure about the centaur's fatal points, but aiming at the head was usually the right choice. "Poochie!" The lightning spear pierced a large hole in the center of the centaur's head. The centaur looked like it was drunk as it spun around on the spot. Then, it lost its sense of direction and fell to the ground. Its limbs trembled a few times before it completely lost its breath. Only then did Thea look to the other side. Diana was also very fast. In just a few moves, she found a flaw in the opponent. She dodged the opponent's attack and flew up. Her body drew a beautiful arc in the air. With a light flick of her wrist, the centaur's huge and twisted head was chopped off by her. The two ended the battle at the same time. Zola, who was watching the show, remembered the blue-skinned monster who saved her and hurried back to her room. The two girls finished off their enemies and confirmed that they were dead. Then they followed Zola into the room. The first thing they saw when they entered the room was a man lying on the ground. He was blue all over and dressed in tattered clothes like a beggar. The most eye-catching thing about him was that he had a pair of bird claws where his feet should have been. This was Hermes, no Hermes. However, this god who was famous for his speed wasn't in a good condition. A crude spear that was similar to the one worn by the two centaurs outside the door pierced through his body. The god of speed was lying on the ground, his breathing barely discernible. He's really good at acting. He really put in a lot of effort to make this family drama go smoothly, Sia thought to herself. She could tell with a few casual glances that the other party was really injured, and very seriously at that. This Hermes was much weaker than she had initially thought. Although the two centaurs at the door were powerful, it depended on who they were compared to. They were definitely invincible against ordinary people, and any slightly more powerful hero could kill them. At least, Thea felt that Oliver wouldn't have to spend too much effort to deal with the two centaurs. If he called his archery club over, he would be able to kill them without any losses. The two magically modified centaurs were such weak opponents, but they had almost killed the god of speed and thieves of the Greek pantheon. Who would believe it if they told others? Divine power couldn't be offended easily, but it didn't bother to hide it either. Hermes was faking it, but his true strength was indeed so low that it hurt people's hearts. Even though he tried his best to hide it, one could still estimate his general strength. Thea felt that she could fight 3 or 4 opponents of this level even if she counted his hidden strength. It was important to know that he was one of the 12 main gods at his peak and had once blessed Diana. Now, his divine power was like a candle in the wind, let alone Diana. He could die if he used a little more strength. Chapter 484. Thea felt that she really didn't understand their thoughts. You're already like this, why don't you just lie down in your god's kingdom? Why do you have to jump out and cause trouble, and then show everyone what it means to struggle at death's door? Thea, see if you can save him. Diana still had some feelings for these gods who had blessed her in the past. She checked Hermes' wound and found that it was very serious, but she wasn't worried. She was originally very talented, and she had also received Morgan Le Fay's magic experience. There was almost no one in the world who could surpass Thea in healing. Diana was very confident in her lover's ability. Who? Hermes, who was lying on the ground with his eyes closed and pretending to be a dead dog, was seriously injured. He didn't know that Diana not only came according to his plan, but also brought another person with her. He had a bad feeling in his heart. This person who suddenly came in might ruin his plan, and this made him very anxious. But now he was seriously injured. Previously, he had pretended to be unconscious. It was unrealistic to immediately jump up to see who this unexpected participant was. No one was more stupid than the other. When the time came, the other person would know that he was pretending, and now he didn't have the strength to jump up. Under his imagination, he had to pretend to be unconscious. This was really a test for his acting skills. He was very anxious, but he had to suppress his consciousness in the depths of his mind. As long as his body showed a slight tremor, Diana would be able to find out that he was pretending to be dead. After all, he also had Athena's blessing, and it wasn't so easy to fool him. Then he heard a clear female voice reply to Diana, and then a warm magic wrapped around his wound. Hermes realized that his plan was in vain. This plan had just started, and there was a huge change. Diana had a demigod who was good at healing. Who was this guy? Unlike Hercules, although Hercules was trapped by the giants for thousands of years, He didn't experience the twilight of the gods. Now, except for a little mental problem, his divine power was basically intact compared to ancient times. Those who hid in their god's kingdom were different. They became gods with the help of faith, and the connection between their god's kingdom and the secular world was too deep and tight. After sleeping for so many years, every minute and every second in the material world was actually wearing down their foundation. It was like a slow suicide. When they finally woke up from their sleep and learned that Zeus, the god king, had disappeared, several gods who were unwilling to die had a new plan. Compared to their heyday, their strength had fallen greatly. Although Poseidon, Hades, and the other big shots were living a tight life, they still had some food at home, and they could last for a long time. As the god of speed and thieves, Hermes couldn't. He didn't know that a year later, there would be something called the god of speed that would deny the meaning of his existence as the god of speed at the level of the rules, resulting in his complete fall. He vaguely felt that he had very little time left, and an invisible sword had fallen on his neck. He was both a chess piece and a chess player. He wanted to survive in the chaos, but his plan was very good. He considered several possibilities and even designed several emergency plans. However, he never expected that such a big change like Thea would jump out in the first act. There must be someone who knew about the relationship between Thea and Diana, but this group of old gods who had just climbed out of their god's kingdom didn't know. They were proud and arrogant. Hermes didn't have much divine power left. He just roughly checked the information and began to put on today's big show. Thea's divine power was that of a real demigod, and there was a vague shadow of the Greek divine power. This couldn't be faked at all. Hermes had to do a deeper analysis. Could it be that old woman Hippolyte had deceived all the gods? At that time, Diana wasn't the only child, but two? Otherwise, it really didn't make sense. In an era when the gods had retired, other than Diana, there was also a young and lively demigod wandering in the world. This was too incredible. Although it was incredible, a warm and vigorous magic power that was full of vitality directly healed his wound. It was not suitable for him to lie on the ground and pretend to be a dead dog. Hermes regretted it so much that his intestines turned green, but he still pretended to be in a trance and opened his eyes. "You are." Although he was mainly looking at Diana, from the corner of his eyes, he still glanced at Sia, who had a stern expression and an outstanding temperament. Her calm gaze seemed to carry a bit of scrutiny. Thea's eyes met Hermes's eyes. The god of speed and thieves felt a little scared. How could this be? No matter how weak he was still one of the main gods. How could he feel scared? He must have thought too much before and felt a little guilty. Hermes didn't know that his feelings of fear had already merged with Thea's eyes. He thought that he was just thinking too much. His eyes flashed and he subconsciously avoided Thea. Although he felt that there was a big mistake in his plan, he still tried to continue the act. He staggered a few steps and found that Thea had healed him very well. Both demigods had sharp eyes. It was not a good idea to pretend to be a cripple. He cleared his throat. "You are Diana, the daughter of the Amazon. I've seen you before. You shouldn't have come here. Take this girl and run to the end of the earth. Otherwise, she will die in front of the god queen." His words were prepared in advance, but he regretted it as soon as he said them. Thea naturally caught his flaw and said very sincerely, "You are Hermes, the god of speed. Your speed is the best among the gods. We will cover you. Take this woman and leave first." Hermes wanted to give himself 2 tight slaps. He was indeed an idiot. What should he do now? Say that he was not fast enough? Humans could brag, but he was a god. If he said that he was not fast enough, he would be finished in minutes. There was no room for discussion. This was the limit of the rules. If he said that he was not fast enough, it was equivalent to giving up his clergy. The consequences were too serious. Just as he was thinking of a solution, Diana's interruption saved him temporarily. "God Queen? The god queen you are talking about is Hera?" "Yes, Hera's power is everywhere. Her jealousy is also unparalleled, so..." He did not continue. What should he say next? Thea laughed out loud. She was everywhere. What was he bragging about? He was just borrowing the power of the divine artifact. Olympus had a divine mirror that observed everything in the world. This was the source of his understanding of everything. Since the beginning of the battle with the centaurs, she had felt a vague prying. Hermes felt that Thea's laughter was a little harsh. Young man, don't underestimate the God Queen. She has unimaginable divine power. Is that so? Through continuous measurement and reverse monitoring, Thea had a rough idea of the other party's location. He seemed to be in another plane. Was that the public area of the Greek gods, Mount Olympus?